we have as you can all see, we have an amazing staff that really holds things together, and are amazing support people for the program, for students, for faculty. And as you probably guessed, they have a ton of experience talking with prospective students. And so if you have questions that we're not able to answer tonight, you can contact them and they will be able to either help by answering the question that you have or make a recommendation of who you might talk to or where you might do the research to get the answer to your question. I'm Dr. Rebecca Toporek. I'm currently the department chair in counseling. I've been at San Francisco State in this department since 2003, so I've seen it evolve and change and grow. And so some of the things that I'm sharing with you tonight come on the past few years worth of questions, but then also, as I said, having looked through the questions that you all shared with us in preparation for tonight. This is a group of student leaders from, this was, I think, 2019. This was a few years ago, but I love seeing their bright, smiley, shiny faces. So I'm going to share with them. Let me go ahead, and I'm going to, since I started a little bit late, I'm going to kind of speed through, and I'm going to ask if you can hold your questions till the end, because I'm going to provide a lot of information about our program, our mission, our aspirations, about the programs and specializations within our department, specific courses and internships, and then the admissions process. And actually, the QR code for the slides isn't up yet. So I'll, once we get the recording prepared and ready to put up online, then we'll post the slides up there as well. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge that San Francisco State University is located on the occupied Ohlone Ramaytush territories, and we humbly acknowledge that our opportunity to live and work in what is now called the San Francisco Bay Area is only possible by the sacrifice of many Indigenous people historically, as well as their contributions today. We also acknowledge that we benefit from the many Black and Brown communities who have worked often in unjust circumstances to make the public university system possible in California as well as the U.S. as a whole. And I personally want to share with you my commitment to working with Indigenous communities locally to the extent that is appropriate for me as a white person, particularly land back and rematriation of the land movement is where I have put most of my energy. I think it's important to acknowledge both the contributions that communities have made to our department, to our community, as well as to acknowledge my responsibility to give back and contribute to that in the ways that I can. So I want to share, as you probably saw on our website, our mission. It's an aspirational mission. It's very lofty, and we work toward it, and also recognize that we continually have we have a way to go. What you see up in the photo on the top right is the hooding, graduation hooding of students as they graduate. The person in red there is our former dean, who will be, as of this January, become one of our faculty members. He was our faculty member for a long time, became the dean, and is now returning to teaching. One of the students standing up there was a graduate from our program who was hooded, recognized as a distinguished graduate, represent the class of, I think that was 2019 again. So our aspirational mission is to train the next generation of counselor leaders who recognize that liberation of all communities is only possible when an intersectional, participatory, community-driven approach to counseling is practiced. Our training program is grounded in the belief that counseling as a field of practice affords professionals the knowledge and skills needed to carry out social justice work, and doing that through strength-based healing, wellness, advocacy, critical consciousness development, action-oriented scholarship, and research. And this is true for all of our specializations in the department. So we carry these missions out in various ways, depending on the settings that we're working in, but holding to those values intersectionally, which would be looking at our different identities. And rather than simply the combination of those identities, the intersection of those identities within a socio-political environment and what that means, for example, for a student who identifies as a Black, queer, non-binary person, that those different identities will come together in ways that are unique, not additive, but unique in the ways that the world engages with them and in the ways that the world engages that they engage with the world. And so recognizing and acknowledging our own identities, both our intersectional identities, but also the various perspectives that we bring, and again, how the socio-political environment engages with us, is an important part, both for our faculty, but also for our students. And so that's where the critical consciousness development comes in. We approach, and counseling as a field is distinguished, I think, from other fields because we focus on strength-based healing. We always have. It's a part of the foundation of counseling as a profession, and we continue that way. So whereas some other professions, such as clinical psychology and others, have sort of more recently come to see the importance of that, it is a founding principle within counseling. So as you probably saw, because you've all done some research on our website, we have 6 different counseling specializations. And when you apply, you will need to specify one of these for a specialization. As Katsufumi was talking about when I came on earlier, that you also may choose an emphasis. You're not required to choose an emphasis when you apply, but that is an option for you. And basically an emphasis is that it's almost like a double major. So you complete the requirements from both the specialization and an emphasis. The main difference is that you may have fewer internship hours for your emphasis, depending on what it is. And I'll get into some different combinations. So the other thing that tends to be a little bit confusing for people when they apply is that we have 3 degree programs and 6 specializations. And so when you do the application, you'll be asked to identify what degree program you're applying to. Under the Master of Science in Counseling, you will find 4 of our specializations: the career specialization, college specialization, gerontological counseling, and school counseling. If you're applying to the clinical mental health counseling program, you would choose the Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health. And if you're applying to the concentration in marriage, family, and child counseling, you would apply to or MFT, you would apply to the Master of Science in Counseling with concentration in marriage, family, and child counseling. And Katsufumi has done a lot of work to try to make sure that that's clear in the application. But if you get stuck, you're more than welcome to contact us. Definitely, as he said, read through those instructions very, very carefully. Provides a lot of basic information about how to navigate through these different questions. So when we look at the combinations of specializations and emphasis, as I said, we have 6 different specializations, and 5 of those you can choose to have an emphasis. The career counseling can be an emphasis, clinical mental health counseling, college counseling, gerontological counseling, and school counseling. Marriage, family, and child counseling, MFT, is not available as an emphasis. So that's important to know. So if you are applying to the marriage, family, and child counseling, the MFT program, that must be identified as your specialization, not an emphasis. There are some combinations of specialization and emphasis that may require 3 years of internship. The internship basically needs to be in your specialization. There are some internships that combine and are approved for a range of different specializations. The easiest one that comes to mind for me is the combination of career counseling and college counseling. Many of our internship sites will combine both of those, but we have a range of other types of internship sites that accept different combinations. So for example, some sites that might be college counseling and clinical mental health counseling, school counseling, along with clinical mental health counseling or college counseling or career counseling. Marriage and family, child counseling as a specialization might have any of the others as an emphasis. And so if you are combining, it's important to meet with your advisor and be very careful about the type of internship that you're looking at to try to streamline the time in your program. The one combination that absolutely will require 3 years of internship is a combination of school counseling and college counseling. And that's because school counseling requires 2 full years of internship in a K through 12 setting, either elementary, middle school, high school, 2 of those 3. And college counseling requires a minimum, if you have it as an emphasis, it would be 1 year in a higher education, college or university setting. If you have college counseling as a specialization, you actually need to do 2 years in a college counseling setting. And if school counseling was your emphasis there, you actually would have 4 years of internship. So that's really important as you think about the combinations that you might want to put together. So how do you decide which specialization or program is right for you? We have posted bios of the specialization faculty on our website. We've also posted information and course requirements for each specialization. Each specialization has also created a video that provides you a little bit of extra information and introduction to that. Think about also what type of setting do you want to work in? And so my background is as a career counselor and a college counselor, and I also was a mental health counselor. But when I think about what I know as a career counselor, when you're choosing a path, it's helpful to look ahead and take a look at some sample job descriptions. Find ones that reflect jobs that you'd actually like to do, and then look at what do they require? What is it that you need to have? Certainly doing informational interviews is important as well, but the nice thing about job announcements is they will tell you what the minimum is. And so think about or look at, do they require a license or a certification? And if so, what of our specializations will provide you the opportunity for a pathway for that license? So that's a really critical piece. And you may want to do mental health counseling, but depending on the setting that and the population that you're working with, one specialization may be better than the other one. The other thing, as I said, is what population you want to work with and in what way. And so to be very transparent, that's one of the things that my hope for these information sessions is that, for example, if you are very committed to working with Native American populations, American Indian populations, specifically in community mental health settings, it's important to take a look at what types of folks they will hire. And the federal government is very slow to shift to looking outside of what they traditionally have done, which is social work. And there is some acceptance of MFTs, much slower acceptance of LPCC. That's very specific to that type of setting. Other settings, almost all other settings, take a look at both MFT and LPCC. And if you're looking at working with children and families specifically, then the LMFT license is probably most appropriate. If you're looking at working in integrative behavioral health and some of those other areas, then the LPCC and clinical mental health would be appropriate. And look at the website for each of those programs, and they'll talk a lot more about the licensure and the process, because I'm mentioning that now because there were several questions that folks posted that were related to distinguishing between that. Also, if you're debating between counseling, psychology, social work, or other fields, talk to those other disciplines as well. Talk with clinical psychology faculty, talk with the social work faculty, and really evaluate what are the perspectives that they bring to the work. What types of internships do they have for their students? What types of jobs do their graduates get? And also take a look at BBS. So BBS is the California Board of Behavioral Sciences, and that's the board that oversees the licensure for the LPCC, and the LMFT. If you're looking at school counseling, you would go to the California credentialing, teachers credentialing, and that's where the PPS is housed, Pupil Personnel Services Credential, and that's what's necessary to be a school counselor. If you're looking at other school roles, for example, school psychologist, school social worker, be sure that you read the job descriptions for each of those and take a look at what is it that you actually want to do within schools. Those are not interchangeable jobs, and those credentials are not interchangeable credentials. Take a look at and learn about what are those fields about, and then make your decisions based on that. All right, this is one of my favorite photos of our graduates. I think this was 2019. This was right pre-COVID. That's part of why everyone is so happy in this photo. But I'd like to talk a little bit about professional paths. So I'm going to go through each of the specializations and share what that's like. So if you choose a career counseling specialization, there are really two paths that you can take. If you want to become a career practitioner working within college and university career centers, employment centers, nonprofits, private practice, really focusing on employment and career counseling. There is no need to get a license or to follow the LPCC track. But if you do want to become licensed and become a holistic career counselor that includes mental health counseling along with career counseling, then you would want to choose a clinical mental health counseling emphasis. And with that emphasis, that's the pathway to toward the LPCC license. For all of the folks following the pathway for an LPCC license, in addition to completing the coursework and the internships in the program, after you graduate, there are 3,000 post-degree supervised hours required, and then there are a couple of licensure exams that you take as well. In terms of college counseling, if you have college counseling as your specialization, again, that is often combined with career counseling. But again, there's no license required for college counseling positions specifically, unless you're working in mental health counseling with community college or university level students. If you're not planning to do mental health as your primary role in the college setting, then no license is needed, and you would be working again within community colleges and universities as advisors, as student retention specialists, student affairs professionals, general counseling in community colleges, but might also be working in the Dream Center or Umoja or some of the other Puente, some of the other programs that are student focused and provide counseling to students in navigating their pathway in higher education. If you do want to work in college student mental health, then you would want to add a clinical mental health counseling emphasis. And again, after doing the program, completing the internships and the courses, there are 3,000 post-degree supervised hours required, and that leads to the LPCC license. And so folks who are working in higher education and college student mental health may have that combination, as well as I'll talk about the MFT combination in a little bit. Gerontological counseling has a similar kind of two-pronged pathway. It is possible to be a gerontological counselor working with elders in nonprofits and a wide range of things. Again, that would not be a mental health focus. To be very honest, most of our students who pursue gerontological counseling do that in concert with a license that will allow them to practice as a mental health practitioner. And so that would either be the LPCC license, in which case you would do a clinical mental health counseling emphasis in addition to the gerontological specialization, or MFT, which again, I'll speak about in a minute. Now, school counseling, having a PPS credential is essential. It is a requirement for a school counselor. And our program, our school counseling specialization, leads to the PPS credential. Everyone who's in the school counseling specialization is eligible for the PPS credential. And even if you do an emphasis in school counseling, you're eligible for the PPS credential when you finish. This combination, school counseling, whether it's a specialization or an emphasis, the requirements are the same. There are 900 hours of internship required, regardless of whether it's a specialization or an emphasis, and that's a significantly larger number than for the other specializations and emphases. Some school counselors also choose to pursue a mental health license, either an LPCC or an MFT. And so with that, they would combine that with their PPS. And so you would do this dual track, sort of the school counseling specialization along with CMHC emphasis. Again, I'll talk about the combinations later with the LPCC or with the LMFT. So clinical mental health counseling specialization, if your primary focus is to work in mental health and you're specifically interested in working in community settings, hospitals, integrative behavioral health, perhaps private practice, then you would look at clinical mental health counseling as a specialization. You would work with a wide range of different populations. And again, if you have CMHC as your specialization, you can also do career, college, gerontological counseling, and actually school counseling. That was not an option before, but this year that will be an option. And then with the marriage, family, and child counseling specialization, again, that leads to a license, an LMFT. And so for that, you would do the marriage, family, and child counseling specialization. You can combine that with an emphasis. Actually, I didn't even list here. You can combine that with any of the other options: career counseling, college counseling, gerontological counseling, school counseling, and clinical mental health counseling. For people who are interested in pursuing both licensure tracks, the LMFT and the LPCC, you would specialize in marriage, family, and child counseling, and then you would have a CMHC emphasis. Again, as with any combination, you want to be careful about choosing the internships that'll satisfy both. So the difference really between an MFT or an LMFT and an LPCC, or the clinical mental health counseling, really has to do with the types of settings that you're working in, the approach that you want to take to the work that you're doing, and to the courses that you're taking, and then also the populations that you'll work with. I think the biggest distinction to think about is that marriage, family, and child counseling comes from a family systems perspective. So the courses are centered around a family systems perspective, the specialization courses, the internships also, and the discipline itself comes from that family systems perspective. The clinical mental health counseling perspective really comes from a wellness perspective focused on community mental health and integrative behavioral health. And we are really fortunate in our department that our two lead people in the clinical mental health counseling program have a really strong background in rehabilitation counseling and disabilities. And both of them have their research areas in serious mental illness, serious diagnoses. And so they bring a strength-based perspective to that, and a really exciting, I think, look at the cutting edge of mental health workforce. So just a brief overview, and again, I'll put these slides up once the video is ready to be posted. We have 3 different programs that lead to state of California licenses and credentials. We have the pathway that leads to the licensed marriage and family therapist, the licensed professional clinical counselor, and the pupil personnel services credential. So if you want to pursue the pathway of the LMFT, you choose the specialization of marriage, family, and child counseling. If you want to choose the pathway of a licensed professional clinical counselor, you pursue the clinical mental health counseling. And if you wish to pursue school counseling, then you would, the PPS credential and work in schools as a school counselor, then you choose the school counseling specialization. In addition, we have national certifications. So all of our specializations, students that graduate from all of our specializations are eligible to sit for the exams for the National Certified Counselor. Career counseling specialization and emphasis students can sit for the Certified Career Counselor credential. We also have a pathway for the Certified Mental Health Counselor and the Certified Rehabilitation Counselor. And so those last two are specific to clinical mental health counseling. If those last two, you want to go with those. So a brief overview of what does a licensed pathway and credential pathway look like. For the LPCC, again, it was connected with the CMHC specialization or emphasis. You complete all of the coursework required. There's a total of 3,000 hours of supervised experience after completing the master's program, in addition to the supervised experience you receive in internships while you're in the program. And there are also licensure exams post-degree and after your required supervision hours are completed. For the LMFT, the Licensed Marriage Family Therapy, that is a master's degree in marriage, family, and child counseling, and or MFT. Ours specifically is called the MFCC because of the way the university has it set up, but it is equivalent. It's the same thing as MFT. With that, after pre-licensure, you have to complete a total of 3,000 hours of supervised experience. The majority of those are done after you graduate from the program, but you are able to use, I believe it's about 1,300 hours of the supervised experience that you do while you're in the program. And that can be completed as a part of the 3,000 hour package. And then there are licensure exams also required for that. For the Pupil Personnel Services credential, that requires a master's degree in school counseling as a minimum, and then state mandated forms and health clearances that you would complete after you complete your courses. Actually, it's toward your the last 2 semesters in the program. The school specialization faculty will share with you what you need to do in terms of filling out the forms. But basically, you fulfill all the requirements within our program for the PPS credential. We're accredited by 3 different accrediting bodies. The Western Association of Schools and Colleges is the accrediting body for the university itself. In addition, we're accredited by KCREP, which is the oldest and largest accreditation body for counselors. And then the school counseling is also accredited under the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Our faculty, there are little photos of our smiling faces up in the corner of this slide. We have 10 full-time faculty, including myself, and more than 20 part-time faculty. Our part-time faculty are working in the field. So they are community college counselors, they are university counselors and advisors, they are mental health practitioners in agencies and private practice, in hospitals, in all kinds of settings, and in schools, in K through 12 schools. Our faculty are committed to student success and helping you to develop as effective and competent counselors. And I should say ethical as well, ethical and effective, competent counselors. Our faculty are internationally and nationally recognized as scholars and professional leaders. You can see in the bios for all of our faculty. All of our full-time faculty have their bios up. Many of our part-time faculty also have their bios up, but some are still getting them to us. But you can see the kinds of work that we all do in addition to teaching classes and advising and mentoring students. All right, so what I'd like to talk about next is what it's like to be a student in the program, specifically in relation to course load, internships, time to graduation, resources, and community building. These are photos of our students at various different activities. The first one is at Rock the School Bells at Skyline College, Hip Hop Pedagogy Conference. The next is Project Homeless Connect. For those of you who aren't familiar, actually tomorrow is a Project Homeless Connect event, and volunteer there. And then these are 5 of our students from a few years ago after presenting at a conference. All right, so for all specializations, all 6 specializations, there are 60 units of coursework required for the degree. You must have at least 1 specialization, and again, you optionally may choose an emphasis when you apply. You can also, once you're in the program, request to add an emphasis, and we have a process that you would follow for that. I recommend that if you're admitted to the program and you start, that it's really important to talk with your advisor and the coordinator of your specialization and emphasis if you're thinking about adding an emphasis. So of those 60 units, the majority of those units are core classes that all people take with a special, regardless of your specialization. And that's why some of the questions said, well, how can I tell the difference between these specializations? Because it looks like there's so much overlap of the courses. And that's true because we are an accredited professional counseling program. Every single counselor needs to have some basic courses. So that's the social and cultural foundation classes, assessment, ethics, theories, counseling theories, research. You can see on our website that all of the different courses that are required, and you'll see that all of the specializations have the same core classes required. In addition to that, you have specialization courses. And so for the specializations or emphases, there are between 2 and 4 additional courses required. In addition to that, you have a requirement of 2 years of internship. And while you're in internship, you must be enrolled in internship classes. And so there are 2 years of internship, and every semester you're enrolled in internship classes that are specific to your specialization and emphasis, or they may be mixed, where you're actually taking the internship class with folks from other specializations. Your internship itself would be in the type of setting related to your specialization. In terms of the courses, the majority of our courses are offered in the fall and the spring, and we are a fall admit only, which means that when we do the admissions process, this coming cycle, it will be selecting students to begin in fall 2024. We do not admit students to start in the spring nor the summer. We do each year offer 1 to 2, sometimes 3, rarely, but sometimes 4 courses in the summer, and that varies from year to year and funding, and that all depends. Which courses are offered in the summer depend on a poll that I take of students saying, what do you need? Are you going to take summer? And what do you need if you take summer classes? So it's really important to plan to complete most of your coursework during fall and spring. We do not offer courses during the winter session at State. We're a 2-semester program. What's important to know is that each class meets 3 hours 1 time a week for the full 16 weeks, 15, 16 weeks of each semester. And those courses may be from 9 to noon. It may be from 1 to 4, it may be from 4 to 7, it may be from 7 to 10. It varies by semester depending on which classes you're taking. It's also important to know that if you're going full-time and you're taking a full set of 5 courses, you will likely need to be on campus or in courses 2 to 3 days a week. Even for part-time, it's likely that you will need to have courses on different days. It's not possible to have your courses, say, only on Mondays for your entire time in the program. That doesn't work. It's also important to know that some courses may be offered only during the day, some only at night. And the majority of classes are in person. Only a few are offered online, and a few are offered hybrid. But you must actually engage in the program as an in-person program. And so as you think about your work, your responsibilities, think about whether that's feasible for you. It's also important to know that working full-time in the program is sometimes okay if you're going part-time, but working full-time and doing internship is very, very difficult. So it's likely that there will be some years. If you're going part-time, it will take longer than 2 years. And in that case, there may be some years where you're doing, especially second year internship, where you won't be able to fit in the full-time working and the internship. I'm going to talk more about internships as we get a little bit further along. The other question that came up for a few people was, is there a part-time or full-time options? You can do either one. That's fine. You can start full-time and go to part-time, or start part-time and go to full-time. It just changes how long you're in the program. And I see there are a lot of chats coming up, and I'm going to ask you generally to hold off putting your questions in chat until we get through all of this information, because many of your questions may be answered through the presentation and when we have time at the end for questions. Okay, so questions about time to graduation. How long might it take? If you have a specialization only, there's a minimum number of units, 60, as I said. If you're going full-time, that will take you 2 years. For that, you need to be flexible. You need to be really on it in terms of you're following the course sequences, meeting with your advisor, doing the internship search in the time and place that we provide the opportunity to go through that selection process. And that's if you only have a specialization. If you only have a specialization and you're going part-time, it's likely that that will take 3 or more years. It depends on how many units you take each year. The university limits at 7 years. We have very few, if any, students who go that full 7 years. Most of our students complete in about between 2 and 3 years. If you have a specialization and an emphasis, that usually is going to require between 63 and 72 units. It depends on the combination of specialization and emphasis. If you're going full-time, that may take you between 2 and 3 years, again, depending on the combination, but also depending on how many courses you take and whether you're able to take some of those during the summers. Specialization and emphasis, if you go part-time, that will likely take 3+ years. And to be very honest, if you have a specialization and emphasis, it's very possible that maybe 3 years, even if you're going full-time. Because that depends. If you're staying at 15 units, there will be a few extra classes that you will need to take. The other thing to think about in terms of time to graduation is that when you apply, one of the things that we need to do is we need to assess your writing, and we do that during the application process as we read your personal statement. That's how we use to assess your writing. And so that's why you need to sign an affidavit that you are actually the author of that personal statement. The graduate studies requires that all incoming graduate students have a writing assessment, and that's the way we've chosen to do that. We may identify applicants if they are accepted into the program. We may refer you to take HSS 700, which is a graduate level writing class. We require a lot of writing throughout the entire program, and we want students to be successful. So it's also up to the student to sort of determine how comfortable do you feel with academic writing. And the HSS 700 is a great one to get more practice, more experience, more feedback. To be a successful writer in the program. If you are taking the HSS 700 or if you are doing a specialization and emphasis, you generally either need to add on time to your program or take a very heavy load. We never recommend that a student take 18 units at the graduate level. 15 units is more than enough, and especially when you're doing internship. So that takes us to internship, and I have a map of the Bay Area up in the right corner, and that's because our internships are all over the Bay Area. And so as you look at your time in the program and plan out courses, That's an important thing to consider, because there may be commuting and traveling that you need to build into your schedule, in addition to the time that you have with family and your job and all those other things. So we have more than 200 approved sites, and the internship approves training at master's level counseling skills. Students are only approved, only allowed to do their internship at pre-approved sites. So there's a whole vetting system that we go through, because the internship site must actually be able to provide you with the training that is required and necessary, both for our program, but also for the accrediting body and the licensure bodies. And so we have a whole support system set up in place to help you get into an internship that's going to satisfy the requirements. So that's part of why the internship sites actually have to apply to us in order to be considered as an approved site. There's a process. It takes usually a month, 2 months to go through that approval process. So we offer an internship fair every January for students that are currently in our program, where they meet with and get information about internships that are available the following year. For students who've been admitted who are entering, let's say students who will be entering in fall 2024, we actually combine with our orientation in the late spring. We combine that with a mini fair with the internship sites that are still available and still looking for folks. Again, it's essential to follow through that process through the department and not seek out internships on your own without the department's involvement. Again, you do 2 years of internship. The first year is 12 to 16 hours per week in your internship site, plus the internship class on top of that. In the second year internship, you do 16 to 20 hours per week, plus your internship classes on top of that. It's important to note that the number of hours per week does depend on the site. And so there are some sites that require 20 hours a week, regardless of whether you're in your first year internship or your second year internship. And we do offer internship workshops for students, so you can kind of think through, what are the questions that I need to ask this site to make sure that they fit into what I want to do professionally, as well as, can I make this work given my life and my school schedule? Internships are almost all weekday daytime hours. In other words, Monday through Friday, during regular 9 to 5 hours. It's not full-time like that, what I'm describing. What's important to note is that most internships do not have evening hours, and they don't have weekend hours. So it's not possible to work full-time during the week and then do your internship on the weekend. It doesn't work that way. The other thing that's important to know is, while you're in internship, you have supervision from a professional counselor, whether they have the license or the credential or the master's degree with additional 2 years of experience. Those are all required of our internship sites, and we have to ensure that those are in place before we approve the site. That's why sites need to apply to us first. We need to make sure all the different requirements are in place. Again, while you're in internship, you enroll in practicum and internship courses. There are a few sites that offer a stipend. Some may actually have an hourly rate. Most internships are not paid. That's definitely an issue. And it's an issue that I know students across the country are actually looking at and advocating for. And we wholeheartedly try to encourage our sites to offer stipends or salaries or hourly rates. Part of the issue is that there are some sites that, if they were required to pay, they could not offer an internship. And so that's something, again, for you to take a look at and to think about whether or not, to say that up. Do you want to choose an internship site that fits well in terms of your career goals and sort of the environment you want to be in? It's possible the optimal ones for that may not be paid sites. And then there are other sites that do pay and may or may not fit with what you want. So that's something to think about. That's one of the reasons why some of our faculty have been really active in trying to secure grants and find grants. The federal government has been has provided the most opportunity for training grants recently through integrative behavioral health. So students who are interested in pursuing that will be eligible for applying for the training grants that we have, and those are described on our website. Generally, if you are currently employed when you enter the program, generally that is not going to be approved as an internship site, because, to be very honest, if you're already working in that job, that means you're already qualified for that job. That means, what is it that you have to learn to be a master's level counselor? The internships are specifically to give you training above and beyond what you're already qualified to do. So again, I mentioned we try to provide support for students finding internships. That is a big part of what we do. We have an internship coordinator who works throughout the academic year, managing sites, managing applications from sites, helping facilitate students in the internship search process, as well as helping to facilitate the process of logging hours, all of the things that are required to meet the requirements for pre-licensure, etc. So as I said, all internships must submit an application and are reviewed by the department and the specialization coordinator and internship coordinator to ensure that they provide an appropriate experience and supervision for the students that are in that internship. Making sure the crisis protocol is in place, making sure that students will get enough client hours, all of those things. We also need to ensure that they meet department standards, but also Board of Behavioral Sciences standards, the CCTC standards for school counseling, and our accrediting body standards. And so, again, may only choose pre-approved site. And I'm emphasizing that over and over because every year we have some students who say, oh, I have this great site, I'm going to start in the fall. And it turns out that's not a site that's been approved, hasn't even talked to us, isn't actually able to provide the necessary training. And then the student has to start all over with their search. So really important aspect. We provide a master list of all sites that are approved to students. We don't provide that list to folks who are not in our program because we work very, very hard to curate that and develop the relationships with those sites. So that list is only available to our students. We offer, as I said, an internship fair for incoming students at orientation, and then internship fair and workshops for continuing students. We have the internship coordinator, your faculty advisor, specialization coordinator, and then the office staff who also help for a variety of different things related to internship. Once you're in an internship and you're enrolled in practicum or internship class, your instructor for that class is also the liaison to your internship site and to your supervisor. And so it's really in your site and related to your internship, you have three support people. Well, there are three people who are critical. You as one, your internship instructor, and your site supervisor. In addition, again, you have your faculty advisor and the internship coordinator. So how about community building in the department? There are a variety of different things that are in place to try to help build community. We have, just so that you know, we have about 140 students that are in our program. Each year we admit about 50 students to the program. And so some of these community building opportunities are student-led. So for example, student organizations, our Counseling Student Association, and just started last year is the First Gen Counseling Student Association. We also have staff members, including your faculty advisor, the internship coordinator, department staff, the department chair, and the specialization coordinators. In addition, we're not a rigid cohort model. And what that means is that you don't take every class with exactly the same people in exactly the same order, because we want to allow you the flexibility for the other parts of your life, your family, work, whether it's part-time or some full-time. So some students will choose to spread their courses out. Some students will choose to do them all within 2 years or 3 years and stay in the recommended sequence. And so for that, the cohort that is created is really with your specialization. So whether that's in your internship class or in the community building that happens through your specialization. In addition, last year we started a mentoring project, and we're getting started this year with that again, a little bit of a late start, but starting in October, we'll hope to be matching up students, incoming students or new students in their first semester with current students who've been in the program longer than a year. So that there is a buddy, so that there's somebody that you can connect to on a regular basis. In the last year of the program for you, we also have an alumni mentoring project, and that's where we connect students in their last year to alumni in their specialization. So they have a minimum of 1 semester as a mentoring relationship, but may go on beyond that. So across the campus, there are a range of resources for students, and I want to emphasize that the Graduate Studies website actually provides a lot of information about tuition fees, financial aid, but also off-campus housing, information for international students, funding your education. There's a lot of information that's there. In addition, the Disability Programs and Resources Center, DPRC, is a really important resource for students who may be needing accommodations. There are a number of programs within the Equity and Community Inclusion branch within Student Affairs. For example, sorry, to get a drink of water. Sorry, a range of different affiliation and affinity groups through the Equity and Community Inclusion. You can take a look on the SFSU website to see that. Counseling and Psychological Services provides mental health counseling to students. We also partner with them for one of the mental health internships on campus in our Peggy Smith Clinic. In addition, the university is focused on food, shelter, and success. So there is a food pantry on campus. There's a shopping Gator. It happens once a week. I'm sure our staff members remember the name of it better than I can. And then there's also student health, and there's also the wellness center, the Mashouf Wellness Center. Anybody who's at SF State knows, beautiful building, great facilities. In terms of scholarships and grants, there are general scholarships and grants available through financial aid, but we also have some through the Department of Counseling that are specific to our graduate students. We have about 5 scholarships every year, ranging between $500 and $2,000 per scholarship, with a range of different types of requirements for those scholarships. In addition, I mentioned the training grants that we have. There are currently 3 training grants. And those offer between $10,000 and $20,000 over the course of the time in the program. Again, those are mainly focused on integrative behavioral health or rehabilitation services training grant, or there's a new school mental health services training grant. And so if you look on our website under the scholarships page, you'll see the information on each of those. There is also, for those people who want to get some experience teaching, especially for college counseling folks or career counseling folks, we have a small instructor mentee program where students can work with an undergraduate instructor who becomes a mentor for them for 1 semester. In undergraduate courses that we teach, there's a small stipend for that, and also independent study that students can enroll in. If a student is already a staff member at SF State, there is a fee waiver program for SF State staff. And then there are some, but pretty rare, to be very honest and transparent, not many paid research or graduate assistance positions, but there are sometimes, depending on the grants, that may be a possibility. The other thing that we have been able to do to some extent is also work study. So we do have hire 1 student through work study. We do have many other work study positions on campus. So for work study, you apply through financial aid, and depending on the award package that you receive, that may include work study money. All right, so what does it mean to be in a professional counseling training program? It's different than other graduate programs. For example, a graduate program that is really primarily academic. While ours has a heavy academic load, it is oriented toward providing service and being a professional counselor in the community with vulnerable populations. And so for that purpose, there are some very specific expectations that we have of students and expectations of ourselves to prepare students to fulfill that role ethically and effectively, as I said. So the expectations that we have is a commitment to multicultural and social justice values, that students and us will be accountable, will participate, we will be present. We expect collegiality, again, among ourselves, but also among students. To maintain communication with faculty advisors and instructors, to look ahead to ensure that there's a reasonable load and balance of responsibility. So as you look at your life and look at how are you going to manage this, talking with folks, talking with your family about what it would mean for you to be in a program like this. But actually, if you're looking at other programs too, those are really important questions to ask regardless of what type of program you're looking at. We also expect that folks are prepared for class. So unlike in undergraduate education, our intention is that when you're in class, you're actually building on the readings, building on the materials that are preparing you. So what we do in class is actually more trying to apply and take the material further than simply reading it in a textbook. We also expect students to ask for help when they need it and try to provide a variety of different ways that you can ask for help, faculty advisor being the primary person of contact. And to just give you sort of a little bit of an inkling that all students are required to meet with their faculty advisor at a minimum of once a semester to plan for the following semester, but we encourage students to meet more often than that. And then the other thing is a final capstone project, culminating experience project, which is like a thesis. And I won't go into that too much now. But again, if you want more information about our students and our program outcomes, check our counseling department website under the About, and you'll see our annual program performance report, which gives you demographics of students, reviews the program evaluation that we've done for the previous year, student assessment, and then there's also a vital statistics report that we do each year that gives you additional information. Now, admissions, what some of you have been waiting for this whole time. So we do a holistic admissions criteria. So there's no one criteria that is the most important criteria. All of these things are considered. The graduate studies does require a minimum of a 3.0 GPA. Sometimes if we find that someone has a really strong portfolio, but their GPA is just below a 3.0, we might advocate for that person with graduate studies. But in general, other than that cutoff, everything else we take together as a whole picture. So we read through your personal statement. Very important that you, when you submit that you have worked through it, you've had other people read it, that you actually are the author of that it tells us something about you. As I listened to Katsufumi earlier, he had some really important points and possibilities about when you write that, to talk about why is it that you're choosing this program? Why is it that you're choosing this path? What have your experiences been that have led up to this? It's not simply a resume. It's not just a list of what you've done. It's who you are and how does that shine through? How do your identities contribute to the work that you want to do? How's your engagement with community shaped who you are and where you're going and where you hope to end up? We also take a look at your other educational experiences, your counseling-related work or volunteer experience, and work experience, even if it's not related to counseling. And so there is a form that you fill out. There's specific instructions on our admissions page about filling out the experience form. That's where you actually list the specific positions that you've been in, whether it's counseling related, whether it's paid or volunteer, and the other things that you've done specific to different positions that you've held. There are 2 letters of recommendation that are required, and some of the questions that I saw as you registered had to do with who writes letters of recommendation. It's important that those are written by folks who are professionally positioned to assess your potential as a graduate student. So those would be supervisors, those could be professors. It's not appropriate to have family members write those. It's not appropriate to have your therapist write that. This isn't a character reference. This is really your potential as a graduate student. And so as you choose folks, that's important. If you've been out of school for a while, it's not necessary to have a professor write. If you haven't been in touch with your professors for 10 years, they're really not the best people to write. Then you would want to have your supervisors. If you have professors write, it's really important that those professors actually know something about you other than the grade that you received in their class. So really be thoughtful about who you ask to have write. And there are very specific instructions about how that letter needs to be uploaded. It's the letter writer that actually uploads them. The instructions on our admissions website is really important to follow very carefully. When you start the application process, if you already know your letter writers, be sure that you reach out to them first and get their permission. Know that they'll be able to write a good solid letter for you. And then when you start the application process, you will put in their contact information, and the portal, CalApply, will reach out to them directly and provide them the portal so that they can upload the letter to the site. That's an important thing to do early on while you're still working on the application, because you want to give your letter writers enough time to do it. And especially if they encounter any technical difficulties or they have trouble themselves kind of navigating an electronic platform. The other thing that's really important to us when we take a look at skills, knowledge, experience related to diversity, given our values and our goals within the program, it's essential to us that students who join the program have some understanding of themselves, their identities, how that engages with the communities that they're working in, that they've lived in, what their lived experiences that they bring to this process, and how they engage with others. And so those are some things that we take a look at through the whole package of your application materials. It's really important for me to emphasize that these preparatory courses are not prerequisites. We do not require prerequisites for the program, for applying to the program. I saw there were several questions about that. And so we do recommend, if you've taken Counseling 690, which is a field of counseling undergraduate course, 691, which is a multicultural human relations course, those are part of the counseling minor here at SF State. Those are great things to prepare you. There are also several psychology courses that are helpful as basic foundation. Ethnic studies or multicultural relations courses are really helpful. None of these are required though, so that's important to know. We also do not require the GRE. That has no place in our application process. So you don't need to take it for us. There might be other schools that you're applying to that require it, but we do not require it. Okay, so when you apply, you'll do the Cal State Apply online application. And in that, you have personal information, academic history. There is a section for supplementary program materials, and that's where you'll upload your resume, your personal statement, unofficial transcripts, the experience summary form, and the letters of recommendation. Again, that's going to be uploaded by your recommenders. What you'll put there is going to be the contact information for your recommenders to actually do the process. Again, there's tons of detailed information, very explicit instructions about how to do each step of the Cal State Apply. Katsufumi has spent a lot of time making sure that that's as clear as possible. So be sure that you read through that carefully. If you have additional questions, to reach out to our office staff, and they'll be able to help you navigate through whatever issue you're having. Again, the deadline is January 15th. The online application becomes available October 1st, so that would be this Sunday. I've already talked about letters of recommendation. There is a processing fee of $25 in addition to the university's application fee. And that's really important for us. That's what allows us to actually review the number of applications we received. We received over 580 applications last year. And so we need to make sure that we have enough folks available to actually review all the applications and have expertise able to review it. There's information about submitting the fee on our application instructions on our website. Some specializations may choose to do an interview process. The majority of our specializations actually don't do an interview process. If they do an interview process, they would only select a few applicants to sort of make it to that round. Again, most of our specializations do the selection based on the Cal State Apply and not the interview. Oh, one last thing. Several people asked about does it help to get your application early? Doesn't matter to us. We don't start reviewing until after January 15th. So whether you get it in November or December or January 1st through 14th, we review them all at the same time, and that is through the end of January, February, and early March. And if you don't get it in by January 15th, we encourage you to apply for the following cycle. Wait out till the following October and start again. We are not able to accept any applications after January 15th deadline. Let's see, I already talked about GRE is not required. I talked about the writing assessment, so I'm going to go ahead from that. For fall 2023 admissions, and we received 584, it may have actually been 581 completed applications. We had over 800 people start the application.
It was actually close to 900.
Oh, 900. Thank you, Katsa, for me. 900 who started the applications, and then 584 were the number that we needed to review. Specialization acceptance rates varies depending on the specialization. And actually, you know what, I forgot to update these numbers for this year. I was looking at them last night late, but it was too late. I forgot to change it on the slide. So for career counseling, it was about 25%. For college counseling, about 25%. Clinical mental health counseling last year was about 7%. MFCC was about 6%, and school counseling was about 17%. And so as you can see, excuse me, excuse me, I'm sorry, some allergies or something. The MFCC and CMHC, very, very competitive to get into school counseling and then career and college counseling. And one of the questions that comes up for folks are, well, can I apply under one of the other specializations, and once I'm in, try to switch to a different specialization? That's actually not that easy to do, especially if you're trying to go into the specializations that had to reject a lot of people. And so, for example, MFCC, I'm not even sure that they're even allowing people to apply to change specialization once they're in the program. I think they may only allow during the application process. CMHC, that may vary, but it also has to do with how we plan for the classes we offer. We need to be able to predict what classes people are going to be taking, and so specialization is important. Again, though, once you're in, you may actually be able to add an emphasis. And to be very honest, there are quite a few people who add the clinical mental health counseling emphasis because of the training grants, or because they decide they really do want to pursue licensure. And so we have been able to do that. I don't know, given course availability, whether we'll be able to continue accepting that many people to add that as a specialization, but we'll see. Sorry. Okay, and applicants, when we recommend applicants for admission, that actually goes to graduate studies, and graduate studies are the ones that make the offer. We do try to inform you during the process if you are being recommended, so you have a heads up for that. If you're not being recommended, it's possible that you may be recommended for a wait list. It may be that you simply, and as you can see, there are a large number of students who are not accepted each year, and that's not because they weren't qualified. It's not because they weren't a strong applicant. It's just that they weren't the strongest applicants. Let's see, there were a couple of additional things that I wanted to mention. There were some folks who wanted to hear from other students, and so I'm excited to share with you that during grad preview week in October, we will have a student panel on Tuesday, October 24th in the evening. And on Wednesday, October 25th, we'll have an alumni panel who talk about working as a professional counselor. So you're welcome to see that. We'll be posting that information on our website. I think I addressed some of these other questions. Some questions that come up have to do with work versus volunteer related experience, and is it important? I will say, especially actually for all of our programs, all of our specializations, having experience related to the specialization is essential. It's actually critical. And so if you don't have experience and you're wanting to apply to one of the specializations, my strong recommendation to you is that you spend the year getting some experience and you consider applying the following year. You're welcome to apply if you want now, but you're not going to be a strong competitor in the application process if you don't have experience. It doesn't necessarily need to be work experience. It doesn't necessarily need to be volunteer experience, but it should be one or the other, and related to the specialization that you're following. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here, and let's see, stop sharing. And we have just a few minutes. I see that there are many questions in the chat. And if you have a question that you didn't get answered, the answer is to really look at our website and read through the specializations, but also if it's regarding the application process, reach out to our office staff. I do see a question about I'm in this particular field not related to counseling. Can I still apply? Absolutely. All kinds of people apply to our programs, and all kinds of people are accepted from a wide range of majors and career changers. Again, the important thing though is that you have some experience related to where you're applying to, and not just your lived experience, but actually having been in positions or getting other kinds of experiences of what is it like to be a counselor in that arena. And so that's one of the things we want to know. So whether you are in behavioral neuroscience, or whether you're an engineer, or whether you're a musician, or any of those things, absolutely. If you know counseling and you are familiar with counseling related activities through some kinds of work or volunteer experience, absolutely apply. Let's see. I'm just trying to look to see. I know that we are just scheduled to go until 8, and I want to be respectful to our staff time. I can stay on a little bit longer.
We can open the floor until 8:15.
Okay, thank you, Katsufumi. And what I'd like to do, there may be questions that apply to a large number of people, and those are the ones that I will try to answer. If you have a very specific question, I'm actually going to direct you to contact the office directly. I will say that while we would love to meet with each applicant and talk to you about your individual experience and your individual hopes and dreams, given the number of applications and inquiries that we get, we do not have the capacity to do that. So it is really important for you to do much of the research on your own, and use the website as much as possible, do informational interviews. Our faculty will and coordinators may very well not be able to meet with you individually. So let me see. I see, just kind of trying to scan. I think I've answered a lot of the questions that I see in chat. There are not specific information sessions for each specialization, but there is the video, there is information for each specialization. Let's see. There are some night and some weekend classes, but it is not possible to do, or sorry, not weekend classes. No, we have no weekend classes. We do have some night classes, but you aren't able to do your entire program at night. In fact, you may be able to do maybe 20% of your program at night. Let's see. So there is a question about, is there a difference between requirements if you do a 2-year sequence versus a 3-year sequence? No, the 3-year sequence just gives you more breathing room. And so that means that you can spread out your courses, spread out your internships so that you are taking it over 3 years instead of 2 years. There's not an additional, there are no additional requirements. And the 3-year sequence is available for any student in the program. In fact, you could do a 4-year sequence if you want, a 5-year sequence, 6-year sequence. As I said, most people don't do that. They usually stick to 2 or 3.
There's a 7 years limitation that the graduate study enforces.
Yes.
So you must complete any program starting a date at within the 7 years.
Yes, and that's true for all graduate programs on campus. How many credits can be transferred? That is a good question. We actually can review if you have completed graduate level courses in another graduate counseling program, we can review, and it's usually very few courses that we accept. We have to actually look at the syllabi from those courses, and we don't do that prior to beginning the program. That would be something that would happen after, if you are admitted. And because our program is very specific, we may or may not accept courses transferred from other graduate programs. So it's important to know that prior to coming in.
Additional question. The graduate study will not accept any credit if you graduated from another program.
Right. So if you've used the courses for another degree, you cannot use those. So for example, if you graduated from a school counseling program someplace else, and all of the courses that you took there, if you apply to, let's say, the clinical mental health program in our program, or the college counseling or the career counseling, any of them, you can't use any of the courses that you completed and use for your school counseling degree for this degree. And that's not just our university, that's a policy across the board. Let's see. The information about applying for training grants happens once you are in the program. Let's see, I've answered that. What counts as experience and volunteer jobs without a license? There are so many different opportunities without a license and without degrees. So some folks come after having worked on crisis hotlines, talk lines. Some folks have worked in residential facilities, speaking specifically about mental health experience. Some have worked in community agencies as volunteers or as staff, paraprofessional staff. There's a lot of different things. So I see a comment that there aren't a lot of jobs that provide experience, but that's actually not true. There are actually a lot of opportunities. They may not pay very well, or they may pay well. You know, it's there's a whole range of different people that provide services to folks who need mental health assistance. And so what we really want to know is, have you had close proximity either with an interdisciplinary team that's providing, like, for example, the clinical mental health might be looking, have you worked with an interdisciplinary team who are providing services? Working in shelters is another way of getting experience. Project Homeless Connect that one's just a periodic events. And so that's some good, you know, sort of getting a little bit of experience, but we would want to see something that's a little bit more sustained over time. Another question about research opportunities. In the program, in the department, faculty, especially full-time faculty, are engaged in research. Depending on where they are in their research project, they may or may not have an opening for students who are interested in doing that. Many of those research positions are not funded, but there are some that may be funded if there's a grant. I see Nicholas has his hand up.
Hi, yes, I wanted to ask, I'm currently working as a behavioral coach underneath a team of like IEP specialists, therapists, and academic coaches. I was wondering, would that count as experience for the LPCC? Or I'm sorry, the MPCC?
So let me say how that experience is important. I'm not entirely sure of your question, but let me say that experience would be important to include in your application. So on the experience form, you'd want to be sure to talk about that. I don't know if you're talking about, can you use that for licensure? I'm just going to say no. But in terms of the application, absolutely describe experiences like that. It's also important, you know, we've talked a lot about mental health, but I want to say, for example, for college counseling, if you have worked on a college campus in some student affairs types positions, if you've been a peer mentor, if you've done those kinds of things, those may be very relevant to college counseling and career counseling as well. If you've worked with elders, that may be very relevant to gerontological counseling. If you have volunteered or worked in school settings, that may be very relevant to school counseling. So think about the kinds of work and volunteer experiences that you have done that you can do, and be sure that you talk about those both in the resume, but also the experience form. Let's see. And then the question is, who can help with the application process if you have questions? Hopefully we've answered that, which is to reach out to the department, take a look at the admissions webpage within our department webpage, and the email address is there. And then also, I know that was put in the chat as well. Again, Katsufumi and Gary have done a lot of work to put a lot of information on that admissions webpage. Any other questions?
Two things before go. For international applicants, please make sure to contact Office of International Programming before you do anything. They are the gatekeeper. You must talk to them first in terms of the immigration issue. There are so many different laws and regulations that applies to you that domestic students don't even care. So we don't know anything about the procedure. So please, if you're international applicants, please contact the Office of International Program immediately. It's not too early to start preparing because they get overcrowded. And then for any financial related inquiry, department does not handle any financial related inquiry. So please contact the financial aid office or the bursar's office. Those are the two divisions that handle specifically any financial related matters.
Thank you, Katsufumi. And so the bursar's office would be related to tuition and fees. And then the financial aid office obviously is related to scholarships and things like that. And again, the Graduate Studies website has a section that's called Funding Your Education. And so they provide some information there, as well as the links to those two offices.
I have a question. You did mention about experiences, and what kind of experiences do you need for, because now I'm kind of looking into a career in getting a master's. It was initially school counseling. But what kind of experiences do you need, like work-wise, for career counseling? Because throughout like all my years, most of my jobs have been working with kids. You know, and yeah, in customer service. So it hasn't really.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would recommend that you do, and that everyone does, is to think about the work that you have done and the ways in which that has shaped you in terms of how you think about counseling. So working with kids, you know, of course, it depends on the age of the kids, but there are all kinds of transitions that they go through, and as they get older, whether it's middle school, high school, all sorts of decisions that they make about what's the next step, how they navigate that developmental process, and that absolutely is related to career counseling. There are some people who've worked in industry or other types of settings where they have helped facilitate employees. So for example, some who worked in HR or worked in other types of settings that might be important. I think career counseling is one of those that actually there's a lot of different types of experience that may be relevant in career counseling. It is something that requires specific training. It's sort of like I say, you know, sometimes people say, well, you know, I got a job and I wrote a resume, so I know all there is to know about being a career counselor. But I like to say, well, I went to the dentist too, but that doesn't mean that I know what it means to be a dentist. But think about the different ways. And also, I think it's important in the personal statement to talk about why career counseling. What is it that you've experienced that sort of leads you to being excited about that? And it's very possible that in the process of working with kids and school kids that and other adults, it sounds like you've had different positions like that some of the work may have entailed things that are related to career counseling.
Okay, and that's helpful. Answers my question. How now, to follow that question, if we need any support, you know, during this application, who can we reach out to? Because you did mention that like coordinators or certain staff are not going to be available to.
So with help with the application process, it's our staff that you will reach out to. The apply MSc email, that's where you would want to contact for questions about the application process.
Apply MSc, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the classes that you mentioned before, those are not required?
Right. You mean the preparatory classes?
Yes.
Yes, those undergraduate classes, those are not required.
Okay, so we just need our transcript and what is asked for.
Right, the unofficial transcripts. And the graduate studies in the Cal State Apply is actually going to want unofficial transcripts from all of your higher education experience. So even if you didn't get a degree at that school, even if you only went one semester, they're going to want transcripts from every single higher education institution that you attended.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. We have just about 4 minutes left. Is there?
Rebecca, there was one
Yes.
interesting question.
Okay.
Someone asked about that if this program, any program, will prepare for the PhD program.
Oh, that's a great question. We actually have not a lot, but 1 to 2 students each year that go on to doctoral programs. And we also have alumni who, after working for a while, choose to go to doctoral programs. Many of them go to EDD programs because our university offers an EDD leadership doctoral degree, but we also have some students who go into PhD programs, either in counselor education or counseling psychology. We also have some that go into PsyD programs. PsyD programs tend to be clinical psychology programs, and the PsyDs tend to be in private institutions like in the Bay Area, the Wright Institute or CIIS are PsyD programs, Alliant PsyD program. And so, yes, and one of the things that's really helpful and important is to stay in close contact with your faculty advisor, and they can help guide and direct you in terms of developing research or developing kind of the being engaged professionally. So many of us attend and present at professional conferences, and we do that often with students. Particularly if there are students that reach out to us and say, you know, I really want to know what you're working on. How can I be involved in your research project? Those kinds of things. And we also try to support students who want to submit their own work for conferences and presenting. There are some opportunities on campus to present at showcases and things like that. And so there's a whole professional development process that can be really helpful in terms of applying to doctoral programs later. I actually have one of my close colleagues now that we're co-writing a book with. Another faculty member and another close colleague of mine was a student in the program who ended up going from our program to a PhD program, graduated last year, the year before, and is now doing amazing things. He's always been doing amazing things even before he even became a student in our program, but it's continued. Nicholas, I see you have your hand up, and we have, I think, about 1 minute left.
Okay, real quick. If we don't get into this program, do you can you recommend other programs that would be helpful to us or good for us to maybe also apply to?
That's a really good question, and that's a hard question to answer because it kind of depends on what it is you want to do. What I will honestly recommend for your own benefit is that when you apply, that you apply to multiple programs, and that you talk with each of those programs about what they're offering, and so that you have some choices when the time comes. Or if you're not accepted into this program, then you have some other alternatives. One of the challenges is that on any one campus, with CSU campus, you can only apply to one graduate program in an application cycle. So if you apply to our program, you cannot in the same year apply to psychology graduate program or social work graduate program here on campus. You could certainly do that to other campuses, but for the CSU policies, you can only apply to one at SF State in a given year. So I want to thank you all again, and thank you for your patience. I apologize again for my delay in coming, and apologize and thank again Katsufumi and Gary for taking this over. They both of them have so much expertise. Katsufumi has been our central core person for so many years. He knows so much, and so if you reach out to them, they will do their very best to assist you. Thank you all.